Yun na ang laging kapay hanggang sa magtagumpay. Salamat, salamat, salamat sa RPN. Hindi malilimutan itong alaala ng ating pagsasama sa hirap at ginhawa, sa lungkot at saya. Salamat, salamat, salamat sa RPN. Salamat, salamat, salamat sa RPN. Hindi malilimutan ating pinagdaanan, ating pinagsamahan sa hirap at ginhawa, sa lungkot at saya. Salamat, salamat, salamat sa RPN. Noong simula pa lamang, kayo ang naging magulang. Sa aking bawat hakbang, turo nyo'y tamang daan. Sa aking mga pagsubok, kayo'y laging tumutok. Kayo na ang laging kapay hanggang sa magtagumpay. Salamat, salamat, salamat sa RPN. Hindi malilimutan itong alaala ng ating pagsasama sa hirap at ginhawa, sa lungkot at saya. Salamat, salamat,
Masama kung magkamali tayo rito at dumami ang kaso. Naku po, ang sama ng Pasko natin.
The new guidelines take effect tomorrow until the end of the month. Groups raising concerns over an alleged or illegal policy supposedly carried out by some companies. Employees allegedly have not been paid merely because they are not yet vaccinated against COVID-19. Tristan Odalo has that story.
Lawmakers, the Labor Department, and an employers group take a united stand against the so-called no vaccine, no salary policy, calling it illegal and discriminatory. The Trade Union Congress of the Philippines, or TUCP, denounced the alleged policy of some companies of withholding the salaries of unvaccinated workers, citing the case of 12 food service employees in Metro Manila.
Kinakailangan magpakita muna ng vaccination card bago nila makuha yung kanilang sahod. Natatakot sila dahil kung sila ang magsumbong at mag-surface, ma-identify sila at pag-iinitan, o kaya naman ay baka sila ay tanggalin sa trabaho.
Labor Chief Silvestre Bello slammed the illegal act, adding that employers cannot hold salaries of unvaccinated workers. But he clarifies that no formal complaint on such a policy has been filed so far. The Employers Confederation of the Philippines, or ECOP, says it does not support the policy considering the pace of the vaccination drive.
Hindi mo pwedeng i-hold ang sweldo ng employee mo unless there is a legal basis or legal cause. Yung hindi mo pagbabaksin o pagbabakuna, hindi yan legal basis.
We don't support that, and at the moment it's illegal. We don't feel that we will also support changing the rules of the law.
Many job applicants also opposed the mandatory vaccination policy. Some of them said they were denied employment for being unvaccinated.
Hindi ako payag siya ng gano'n. Kailangan, pagkatrabaho, pag pumasok na ako ng trabaho, kailangan sahod kahit wala akong vaccine.
Kung hindi ka pa-vaccine, pwede kang, hindi ka muna papasukin. Magpa-vaccine ka muna bago ka nila pagtrabuhin.
The Labor Department urges workers who are experiencing challenges over their vaccination status in their workplaces to report to DOLE regional offices for proper action and investigation. Tristan Odalo, CNN Philippines.
Lawmakers in the House of Representatives are now calling for an investigation into the so-called no vaccine, no pay scheme. A COVID-19 testing facility clears the Philippine Red Cross from alleged inaccurate test results. President Duterte and Deputy House Speaker earlier claimed there were over 40 false positive results from the Red Cross laboratory in Subic. A hospital took the swab samples and sent them to the humanitarian organization for analysis. But But the Health Department and the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine found no evidence of contamination in those samples, saying, quote, the results were found to be valid and reliable. RITM explains that test results from Red Cross and a separate laboratory could have differed because the samples were taken 3 days apart. A Red Cross official believes there was malicious intent behind the complaint.
Bakit ginawa in a public hearing? If there was no issue of malicious intent, di ba? They could have written us, they could have called us, and we could have addressed it immediately. Eh hindi, ginawa sa public hearing, parang nasira na yung reputation ng tao, wala naman basis yung kanilang binitawang mga accusations.
Dr. Ubialder of the PRC, also a former health secretary. Other Red Cross laboratories in Metro Manila, Cebu, and Davao also inspected and cleared from erroneous testing by the Health Department. The Red Cross adds it double checks all samples with the viral count near the threshold to confirm if they are positive for COVID-19. 13 more hospitals in Metro Manila will be part of the vaccination of minors against the coronavirus, among them the Caloocan Medical Center, the Hospital ng Parañaque, and the Pasay General Hospital. The Interior Department says the additional facilities will begin inoculations this Friday. Immunization of minors aged 12 to 17 kicked off in 8 hospitals last week. Those with existing illnesses were first in line. The government aims to vaccinate over 144,000 minors this month. The Education Department announces only 30 schools so far will join the pilot run of face-to-face classes on November 15th. The agency initially said 59 schools were allowed to participate in the program, but some withdrew their applications because of lack of support from local governments or parents. Officials say, however, some institutions are still appealing to be included, so the number may go up by next month. The 30 participating schools are from Bicol, Western and Central Visayas, the Zamboanga Peninsula, Northern Mindanao, and Soxargen.
It's moving every day, so hindi talaga natin maitataga sa bato yung mga numero natin pagdating dito sa pagpili ng pilot school. Nag-move talaga siya, kagabi lang nabawasan ng isa, dapat 31 yan, 30 na lang.
DepEd and the National Task Force Against COVID-19 will ramp up the vaccination of teachers and school personnel ahead of the pilot run. In a new memorandum, DepEd said it will generate a list of unvaccinated personnel, which will be the government's basis for the allocation of doses to areas where participating schools are located. Coming up on Newsnight, a Senate panel recommends complaints against former government officials and medical suppliers executives over alleged anomalies in the procurement of products for COVID-19 response. And Senator Bato de la Rosa changes his tune about allowing a probe into the country's war on drugs should he be elected president. Details when we return.
Suportahi ang imong immune system para mabatukan niini ang mga viruses sama sa corona ug uban pa. Pag Herbalaya Food Supplement every day. Aduna kini mga natural herbs ug antioxidants nga mopakusog sa imong immune system. Batukan ang mga viruses. Mag Herbalaya Food Supplement matag adlaw. Inyong mapalit sa inyong mga suking butika bisan asa. Herbalaya Food Supplement. Atong saligan aron virus malikayan.
Mahalagang paalala, ang produktong ito ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamiting panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
O, anyari sa'yo? Ba't nakasimangot ka? Alam ko na. Masakit ang katawan mo, ano? Sa sobrang trabaho? O di kaya masakit ang ulo sa sobrang stress? Break ka muna. Hinga ng malalim at imasahe ang ulo mo gamit ang Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Ako rin ganun eh. Kaya pag mataas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break ka muna.
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy nakaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
Huy, naunsa man ka? Nagbugot lagi ka. Kabalon ako. Ikapoy ka no. Sakit imong lawas tungod sa sobrang trabaho? O sakit imong ulo tungod sa stress? Pahuway una. Ginhawag lawom, ug hiluta ang imong ulo gamit ang Herbalaya liniment oil. Kay mausab ni akong ginahimo, maong akong taas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag Herbalaya break sa
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. Returning to our top story, the government will carry out the alert level system outside the national capital region beginning tomorrow. Now, this comes as the country continues to record a decline in COVID-19 cases. The health department reported over 4,000 new cases today, the lowest in over 2 months. Trisha Tarada tells us more.
The national government has expanded the pilot implementation of the alert level system to other areas outside Metro Manila. Effective October 20th until the end of the month, Negros Oriental and Davao Occidental will be under Alert Level 4. Indoor dining under Alert Level 4 is allowed up to 10% capacity for fully vaccinated individuals only, while outdoor dining is allowed up to 30% regardless of the customer's vaccination status. Activities and establishments are restricted mostly from 10 to 30% capacity. Cinemas, movie houses, casinos, and other betting and gaming sites, bars and concert halls, and kids' amusement industries such as playgrounds and playrooms are not allowed to operate. Cavite, Laguna, Rizal, Siquijor, Davao City, and Davao del Norte will be placed on Alert Level 3, same as Metro Manila. Movement is less restricted with higher operational capacities, but gambling and betting sites, bars and karaoke, and kids' amusement venues are still not allowed to operate. Most of these restrictions will be eased under Alert Level 2. So far, areas under Alert Level 2 are Batangas, Quezon, Lucena City, Bohol, Cebu City, Lapu-Lapu City, Mandaue City, Cebu Province, Davao de Oro, Davao del Sur, and Davao Oriental. Establishments are allowed to operate at higher capacities from 50 to 70%. These include bars, concert halls and theaters, fun fairs or ferias, and kids' amusement venues. Gambling arenas are still banned. All restrictions will be lifted under Alert Level 1, but the government has yet to list any area under this category. Alert Level 1 requires full vaccination of at least 70% of the A2, A3, and eligible population. The COVID-19 Interagency Task Force says the Alert Level system is still on limited implementation.
Kung mapapansin niyo po, ilang rehiyon pa lamang ang na-include dito sa pilot study. Pero sabihin na po natin na yung pagbaba po ng mga kaso at saka yung pag-improve ng ating healthcare utilization rate ay parang may kinalaman po doon sa alert level system na inadapt natin sa Metro Manila.
Based on government data, the ICU utilization rate in Metro Manila has gone down to 59%. Isolation bed utilization is at 38%, while 55% of ventilators are still available. Although there are improvements, the situation is still not as good as it seems on the ground. Philippine College of Physicians President Dr. Maricar Limpin says ICU and emergency wards are still full. She says health workers are worried infections could spike again as restrictions ease.
Importante po, ikonsidera natin na sa larangan ng public health, kabahagi po yung pagkakaroon ng hanap buhay para maiwasan ang pagkagutom. Hindi po lockdown ang solusyon sa COVID dahil alam na po natin paano mabuhay amidst COVID.
The government urges the public to continue observing minimum health protocols and to get vaccinated as soon as possible. Trisha Tarada, CNN Philippines.
Senate Blue Ribbon Committee Chairman Richard Gordon wants complaints filed against people involved in alleged procurement anomalies, including former Duterte advisor Michael Yang. Now, this is among the preliminary findings announced by Gordon at the 12th hearing on the handling of COVID-19 response funds. More from Imar Santos.
After marathon hearings on alleged procurement anomalies, the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee discloses its preliminary findings.
Meron po ako mga finding na partial report. Papakita ko muna sa aking mga kasama at saka po natin ilalabas sa lahat. Ito po ay partial report at ayokong gamitin pang itong mitsa na sabihin tapusin na naman ang investigasyon.
These include a recommendation to prosecute and deport Chinese businessman and former Duterte advisor Michael Yang. He allegedly lent money to disgraced government supplier Pharmally Pharmaceutical Corporation, which bagged more than 11 billion pesos in government contracts despite lack of capital. Gordon wants graft and corruption charges against Yang, former Procurement Service Head Lloyd Christopher Lau, former PS Director and now overall Deputy Ombudsman Warren Leong, and the executives and officers of Pharmally. Gordon specifically seeks estafa charges against Pharmally's Crizel Grace Mago and Mohit Dargani. Mago earlier admitted under oath that Pharmally swindled the government by tampering with the expiration dates of face shields, but she later retracted her testimony. Among the slew of other possible cases, frauds against the public treasury for Lau and Leong, perjury, disobedience to summons, and violation of the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act against Yang and Pharmally officials, and falsification of public documents against Leong, as well as then PS Inspectors George Mendoza and Mervyn Tanquintic. All those identified by Gordon denied wrongdoing during the hearings. Attorney Ferdinand Topacio, counsel for Pharmally's Lincoln Ong, dismissed the initial findings. Outside the Senate, health advocates protested President Duterte's alleged lawyering for Michael Yang and other implicated individuals.
We would like to suggest na sana siguro it's time to create an independent body na siyang gagawa ng investigation, no? Para po hindi po mapulaan ang ating gobyerno na meron pong pagtatago na gagawin.
Health Secretary Francisco Duque and other cabinet officials again skipped Tuesday's hearing on President Duterte's order. Amer Santos, CNN Philippines.
The committee cited Pharmally executives Mohit and Twinkle Dargani in contempt for refusing to submit documents subpoenaed by senators. The Darganis were ordered detained in the Senate, joining Pharmally Director Lincoln Ong, who has been there for over a month now for supposedly lying during the hearings. Meanwhile, Senator Risa Ontiveros claimed that Pharmally also sold medical goods to the Philippine National Railways last year at prices higher than stated in their catalog. The Commission on Audit chairperson says this raises a red flag. The Senate will also ask the Bureau of Internal Revenue to check 2 Chinese-led companies for failure to pay taxes. The next hearing will be on October 28th. Presidential aspirant Senator Bato de la Rosa is having a change of heart. In a television interview, de la Rosa said he will not, said a TV or a newspaper interview, said he will not allow the International Criminal Court to investigate the country's drug war if he wins the presidency. The senator added that he will make sure to protect not just himself, but President Duterte as well. In my interview with De La Rosa, on the day he filed his certificate of candidacy for president, he said he will face the ICC probe.
Hindi naman siguro ako masabi natin na walang bayag. Ginawa namin yon para sa kabutihan ng ating bansa, para matahimik ang ating bansa, para ang mga anak ninyo ay makakapaglakad sa kalsada ng hindi namumulistya, para makatulog kayo ng mga himbing tuwing gabi, na walang akyat bahay, na akyat sa bahay nyo na under the influence of drugs. Ginawa namin yun. So, kung meron man kami kakaharapin na problema, well, andito ako, hindi ako tatakbo. Haharapin ko yan. May bayag tayo, ginawa natin yan, so harapin natin yan.
De La Rosa was at the forefront of the drug war when he was National Police Chief. Last month, the ICC pretrial chamber found reasonable basis to proceed with a probe into alleged crimes against humanity. The Duterte administration reiterated it will not cooperate with the international judicial body. Government data show over 6,000 were killed in anti-illegal drug operations from 2016 to May this year. Vice President Leni Robredo faces pressure from labor leaders urging her to include lawyers Sonny Matula in her Senate slate. The Alliance of Labor Leaders for Leni, or All for Leni, has already endorsed Robredo for president, but the presidential aspirant has yet to choose her 12th candidate for senator. Robredo said 4 to 5 names are being considered, including that of Matula and Makabayan's Neri Colmenares. Matula and 65 other labor leaders presented their agenda to Robredo last week. Matula points out, even if Robredo does not pick him, the alliance will still support the vice president. All for Lenny says it has 350,000 members and vows to deliver at least 2 million votes. The camp of presidential aspirant Manny Pacquiao insists no COVID-19 protocols were violated during a visit to Batangas, but that's despite the crowd turnout in one town. The camp estimates about 7,000 people flocked to Balayan. Pacquiao spokesperson Nikki De Vega admits they were surprised by this. Pacquiao went to Batangas last Friday to distribute cash and grocery packs, but De Vega clarifies the Pac-Man only wanted to fulfill his vow to help the victims.
So wala pong violation dyan. Kung nilapitan siya ng tao, talagang nagulat nga rin si Senator Manny kasi hindi naman, kumbaga, pagbibigay niya ng ayuda sa balayan, yun yung kanyang packet. Nagpuntahan yung mga tao kasi mahal nila si Senator Manny. Sabi nga kasi proud adopted son siya ng Batangas. Pero wala pong na-breach na health protocols doon.
The Interior Department is investigating if health protocols were violated. The filing of certificates of candidacy is over, but critics of the government have so far failed to agree on a common standard bearer to challenge whoever the administration's choice will be. To talk about that and more tonight at 8:30, we'll have with us the spokespersons of opposition aspirants. Join me on Politics as usual, only here on CNN for the People.
Correctly, how many will there be? Or maybe we should ask, will there be one? This is Politics as usual.
An election watchdog calls on the public to trust the automated election system but remain vigilant in the conduct of the polls. The Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, or PPCRV chairperson Myla Villanueva, says the system is not perfect, but she says it is a better option than going back to the manual elections. PPCRV also clarified some myths like the 7-hour glitch in the 2019 polls. That was when election returns failed to enter the transparency server for 7 hours because of an overwhelming amount of data going into the system. But PPCRV confirmed that all the numbers that entered the central server matched with those in the transparency server. And while there is no concrete evidence yet, Villanueva asked people to be wary of foreign intervention in the polls, just like what happened in the in the United States in 2016. Villanueva also warned of cheating that may happen outside the automation system, like vote buying and pre-shading of ballots. Still to come on Newsnight, the latest on Apple's new products. We tell you what features are coming back in the MacBooks and AirPods. And still dreaming of that beach trip? You don't have to go too far, as the Philippines remains a top sun, sea, and sand destination in Asia. Catch these stories next, only here on CNN Philippines.
Suportahi ang imong immune system para mabatukan ini ang mga viruses sama sa corona ug uban pa. Pag Herbalaya Food Supplement every day. Aduna kini mga natural herbs ug antioxidants nga mopakusog sa imong immune system. Batukan ang mga viruses. Mag Herbalaya Food Supplement matag adlaw. Inyong mapalit sa inyong mga suking butika bisan asa. Herbalaya Food Supplement. Atong saligan aron virus malikayan.
Mahalagang paalala, ang produktong ito ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamiting panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
O, anyari sa'yo? Ba't nakasimangot ka? Alam ko na. Masakit ang katawan mo, ano? Sa sobrang trabaho? O di kaya masakit ang ulo sa sobrang stress? Break ka muna. Hinga ng malalim at imasahe ang ulo mo gamit ang Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Ako rin ganun eh. Kaya pag mataas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break ka muna.
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na kaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
Huy, naunsa man ka? Nagbugot lagi ka. Kabalon ako. Ikapoy ka no. Sakit imong lawas tungod sa sobrang trabaho? o sakit imong ulo tungod sa stress? Pahuway una, ginhawag lawom, ug hiluta ang imong ulo gamit ang Herbalaya liniment oil. Kay mausab ni akong ginahimo, maong akong taas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break sa
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na kaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
Salamat sa RPN.
Welcome back. Old is new for Apple with its second batch of releases. The next MacBook Pro reintroduces some well-loved features from the past, including the HDMI port and SD card slot. Here's a look at some of the other updates.
The new MacBook Pro has been reimagined in every way. Let's start with the keyboard. Users value the full-height function row on the standalone Magic Keyboard, and we've brought it to the MacBook Pro. The physical keys replace the touch bar, bringing back the familiar tactile feel of mechanical keys that Pro users love. The keyboard is set in a double anodized black well that elegantly highlights the backlit glyphs on the keys, and it's complemented by our expansive, industry-leading Force Touch trackpad that's perfect for Pro applications. On one side, there's an HDMI port for conveniently connecting to displays and TVs, a Thunderbolt 4 port which connects to high-speed peripherals, and an SD card slot enabling fast access to media. On the other side, the headphone jack now has advanced support for high-impedance headphones, and there are 2 more Thunderbolt 4 ports for a total of 3 in the system. And yes, MagSafe is coming back to the MacBook Pro. MagSafe 3 has a new design that supports more power into the system, and you can still charge via the Thunderbolt ports.
We also expanded the display up and around the camera, making the top border 60% thinner, giving you even more screen real estate. And macOS takes full advantage of this extra space by raising the menu bar up and out of the way, automatically wrapping it around the camera to give you more room for your content.
When you compare the 14-inch model to the previous high-end 13-inch MacBook Pro, you get a giant leap in performance, up to 7 more hours of battery life, a larger display with XDR, an advanced camera, high-fidelity audio, and more ports, all for $1999. And when you compare the new 16-inch Pro to the previous model, you also get a massive boost in performance and capabilities for $24.99.
The Philippines is Asia's top beach and dive destination in this year's World Travel Awards. The Tourism Department announced this earlier today, naming Boracay and Siargao as just some of the many beach spots now open to domestic travelers. Tubataha Reef Natural Park in Palawan and Anilao in Batangas also mentioned as areas showcasing the Philippine diving scene. This marks the country's 3rd straight win as top dive destination in the continent and its 5th total feat for top beach destination. But the Philippines is still vying for 5 other awards, this time in the global category. These include the world's leading beach, dive, and island destinations. And before we go, 40 years ago, a comedy legend gave us the history of the world, and some British women helped change the world. Both are back in the news, seen as David Daniel explains in our Hollywood Minute.
The Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 10 commandments for all to obey.
Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1 took audiences through the ages up to the French Revolution. Despite the title, Brooks never planned a sequel, but 40 years later, Hulu has announced an 8-episode variety series, History of the World Part 2. Brooks will be an executive producer and writer on the sequel. No word whether the 95-year-old Oscar winner will also perform in the show.
We knew we were crazy, but we had to do it. All these women with one purpose had come together.
Mothers of the Revolution tells the true story of the British women credited with helping end the Cold War, marching and demonstrating for years in England, then traveling to the U.S. and Russia to spread their message of nuclear disarmament. The documentary about the Greenham Common women and their historic protest is now available on digital platforms. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
We have 67 days before Christmas, and that is it for tonight.